right. I don't know, watching that video, it got me thinking about this great New Yorker cartoon that ran back in November. I don't know if other folks saw it, but it was a panel discussion, drawing of a panel discussion, looked something like this, and there were sort of 5 older, whiter men on the panel, and the caption was, "The subject of tonight's discussion is, why are there no women on this panel?" Maybe you had to be there, but I was thinking about Tracy because I'm going to give her credit with starting something that I'm not actually sure she actually started, but a number of Twitter campaigns that have gone on more than one occasion to expand the horizons of some various panel discussions. And it introduced this great phrase into the popular lexicon, or at least the lexicon of event planning. And it's a verb, de-dudify. And then that, of course, means to, verb meaning to represent the 51% of the population on panel discussions. Of course, it's not just panel discussions that need to be de-dudified and diversified. That is an issue that pervades our media, mainstream and independent alike. And that is where the Women's Media Center comes in. Their mission is to, quote, make women visible and powerful in the media. They do this with creative media advocacy campaigns and what is quickly becoming a renowned media training program. And we're very pleased to have the president of the Women's Media Center, Jehmu Greene, here with us today to give our closing keynote and cap off a great day. Jehmu.
So as Craig said, I always love to get more of Tracy Van Slyke, who is a member of the Progressive Women's Voices program. Have y'all bought her book, Beyond the Echo Chamber? If you have not, please check it out. Thank you, Craig, for that introduction. And thank you to everyone at Free Press for putting on this summit at such a critical time in the evolution of media. Those of us in this room come from different parts of the media landscape, whether it's journalism, advocacy, philanthropy, policy. At the Women's Media Center, I'm thrilled to lead while carrying out the vision of Gloria Steinem and Jane Fonda to produce journalism as well as advocate for a more diverse and just media, while also training women to be more visible in front of the camera, behind the camera, in the op-ed pages, and on editorial boards. I know that if empowered, each of us in this room would create a world full of fabulous media that would accomplish all of the goals we've discussed today. More local journalism, more investigative journalism, more arts and culture, and more diversity. And I think as discussed in the morning panel, was the title net neutrality, or just talking about net neutrality? It's a kind of phrase that can turn people off. Deanna said it best, and Deanna is also a Progressive Women's Voices alumna of the Women's Media Center Media and Leadership Training Program. But she definitely said it best when she said, no one will rally around being neutral, because it sounds, well, boring. But what we call net neutrality is really about fairness. It's about freedom, particularly the freedom to receive information critical to our communities and our democracy. And as I look out into the audience and recall conversations with some of you and many of the organizations that are represented today, I know that this is an audience of truth seekers and truth speakers. You are really the defenders of democracy. But like many of you and many of our fellow Americans, I felt frustrated and betrayed by the state of media in this country, a media that is out of step with their responsibilities, when we need a media that strengthens democracy, not a media that strengthens government, one that enriches public discourse, not one that enriches corporations. And as each of you know, there is a big difference. The work of the Free Press, which the Women's Media Center has been really proud to support in their fight for net neutrality, is essential to maintaining that is just, democratic, and that actually works for us as a country and a people. Free Press has done such a great job to show how people of color have increasingly been marginalized as media monopolies grow, how ownership of television and radio stations by people of color is at its lowest level since the government began keeping track, and how issues affecting diverse communities have been underreported and ignored. And we all know it's coming. I'll probably get in trouble if I ever want to pursue a position within a presidential administration. I've probably been counting down to it my whole life. But in the year 2050, the United States will no longer have a majority of white citizens. What does this mean for our country and for our media? Project 2050 is a project of the Center for American Progress. It's led by a young woman named Erica Williams, who's participating in the Progressive Women's Voices program. I'm going to give as many shout outs as possible to our women. Her project promotes national dialogue about the intersection of race and policy, analyzes demographics, and develops new leaders. As Erica knows all too well, the media will have to do more than adjust. Multilingual media will need to become larger and more accessible, and the shifts in racial and economic makeup will affect different communities in very different ways. I think as Craig so eloquently put it today at lunch, we will have to increase support for local media if we want to address this reality in a responsible way. Regional media is the most effective way of holding local authorities and institutions accountable, and that could not be a greater reality given what we have seen recently with the immigration law in Arizona. Because the gross skewing of our national story simply cannot continue, particularly because each passing year, the story that commercial media tells about America becomes less and less true. But the reality is that the media environment that is overwhelmingly white is also overwhelmingly male. And this problem just doesn't exist in commercial media. Just a month ago, NPR's ombudsman, Alicia Shepard, conducted an internal study that found that despite the fact that NPR remains a leader when it comes to parity among the number of female hosts and correspondents that they have, and are absolutely, seen as one of the most influential and respected news providers in the world, despite these great accolades that we all would hold up for NPR, women make up just 26% of their sources. If at a time there was ever an excuse for that number, there is no excuse today. Women have been the majority of college graduates for nearly a decade, and now we are earning the majority of advanced degrees. And yet, depending on the media outlet, we compose somewhere between 1% and 30% of sources and opinions featured in the news. NPR, different than many outlets, took the positive step of examining its own practices and is seeking to change them, and we're looking forward to working with them at the Women's Media Center. But a lot of news outlets never even ask the questions of who makes it on air or how they serve diverse communities. But again, as the NPR study shows, this is not just a commercial media problem. Public media absolutely has a responsibility to embrace and correct this problem. Each of you here has a role to play. When you leave out half the population, you simply cannot tell the whole story. Healthcare, Social Security, bankruptcy, the wars, all of these issues, and any issue you can think of, affect women in different ways than they do men. All of these issues are women's issues. Yet from the reporters' desks to the executive suite, women are missing. Just 1/3 of news items cite a female source. And while we have made some good progress in front of the camera in the past few years, we celebrate Katie Couric, we celebrate Diane Sawyer. On Sunday, now we have Candy, and soon we'll have Christiane Amanpour. Women's viewpoints are still regarded as supplemental rather than essential to many stories. Too often, there is an unspoken quota of one. Again, you cannot tell the whole story when you leave out half of the population. And I know that much of this is preaching to the choir. I know that when you get that the vibrant diversity of the people on this planet, both the quality of journalism and the quality of our democracy suffer, the existence of independent media, while being severely threatened because of the concentration of media ownership and how it lies now in conservative hands in many ways, coupled with the erosion and elimination of federal regulations, is making it a much harder playing field. While at the same time, I am excited listening to Jose Vargas from the Huffington Post as he talks about this being the golden era for journalism. So as an organization that helps train some of the best young women, journalists, and commentators, and connects them to various media outlets so that their voices can be amplified, their expertise can be recognized, the Women's Media Center definitely recognizes the power of being connected. The internet has definitely become a distribution platform that can provide unparalleled access to new ideas and new voices. But that's only true if we ensure that entities that provide connectivity allow people to reach independent media makers. In addition to providing a mechanism for distributing journalism, high-speed internet empowers women's groups to mobilize their supporters and organize online. Media is a woman's issue. Broadband is a woman's issue. And as I'm sure all of us here know, women's issues shape not just the life of our families, communities, but the life of our nation. And that's why so many of us have come here to find common ground to ensure that broadband is broad-based in its reach, not just today, but as time and technology evolves. At the Women's Media Center, we believe that collaboration is our weapon of choice. That's why we're thrilled to be working with Free Press on their new Media Fail project. And as we get closer to the 2010 elections, we will be highlighting our Sexism Watch campaign. The women candidates on all sides of the aisle come under incredible attack from local news, from national news, in ways that you never hear the outrage. You rarely hear outrage from broader allied progressive organizations. You rarely hear outrage coming from the media outlets. And so we will be using Media Fail as a vehicle to make sure that as women come under attack from the media, there is someone there to call it out. And we really do hope to work with each of you in this room today to monitor, coordinate, infiltrate, facilitate, and amplify women's voices in the media. We're definitely living in a time of great expectations and sometimes of dashed dreams. We've all seen through the Tea Party-ers that some Americans are venting their fear in the form of anger, even degradation of individuals and communities. Many people simply just don't feel like they're being listened to. And sometimes instead of listening, our media takes the most outrageous and incendiary rhetoric and replicates it just to get a few quick ratings hits. I'm definitely not here to slam the media, but I'm not here to coddle it either. I think we all stand here to take responsibility for ensuring open access to information, creating a more diverse media, and yes, listening to the voices that make America a place of infinite promise. As someone who's been an organizer my whole life, from political campaigns and working to get young people engaged in the political process at Rock the Vote, I believe that it is absolutely necessary that we act up just a little. Earlier this year, the Women's Media Center headed up a campaign against CBS for changing their policies and allowing Focus on the Family, a notoriously divisive and intolerant, anti-woman, homophobic, anti-choice organization, to air for the first time during the Super Bowl, which turned out to be the most watched televised program in American history. They allowed them to air a political ad. And contrary to what many of our progressive allies and even many in the commercial media editorialized about, this was not a free speech issue. This was $2.5 million paid speech. And when a company like CBS can pick and choose a political agenda to support and which ones to silence, like Move On and the United Church of Christ and many others that have been turned away from the Super Bowl, especially in light of the Supreme Court's decision bestowing personhood on corporations. We have to act up. We must hold them accountable. So yes, the ad did actually air during the Super Bowl, but because of our action, the NCAA 2 weeks later turned around and pulled every single television ad, every single online ad from their March Madness coverage. But the movement cannot just be a pushback. We all need to work proactively and diligently to empower individuals and voices who aren't heard. I think the Campaign for Net Neutrality frequently mentions the importance of achieving high-speed and affordable internet access in poor and rural communities. In the same way that we must provide information and access to those lacking it, we must also make space in the media for the voices we don't hear. So I want to ask everyone in this room, what is the percentage of the decision-making positions, the people who control the budgets, the people who control which issues are covered, behind the scenes, we call them the clout-making positions in the media, how many of those positions are held by women? Throw out a percentage. Tracy, you know, you can't say it. 30%. 10, 15, 3% of the decision-making positions across all forms of media are held by women. So not only can you not tell the whole story if half the population is not represented, I don't know what type of story you can tell when 3% of the decision makers are women. So I mentioned that Jose from the Huffington Post, his comment about the golden era of journalism, which I absolutely agree with and embrace, he's here still, and I'm a big supporter of progressive media and the Huffington Post. But even at an outlet that is led by what many would say is the icon for women in the media, Arianna Huffington, just 19% of their bloggers are women. The numbers at Slate are worse, as well as Salon. And I love these sites. They're essential to maintain a strong progressive voice in the national media. But as of now, they are not living up to the values they work so hard to promote. So I ask, are you? The interesting thing is, this is where I was going to say, take a look around the room, and earlier Farai Shadea was here, and she had on this great red dress, and I have on my orange dress, and I was going to say, you know, we're not the only one, or we shouldn't be the only one with vibrant colors on, and we have to bring more color into the room and less testosterone next time. I do think it's interesting, because we have lost some people, and most of the people we lost were men. Not sure what that means. But because of that fact, or actually not because of that fact, this room is still filled with influential, progressive, open-minded people, and as we continue to hold the media accountable, the FCC accountable, the lawmakers accountable, anyone who wants to stop increased access and freedom, we must also hold ourselves accountable. Because in a truly connected world, the media is us. Thank you.